Happy Throwback Thursday, you guys. I hope you are checking the daily announcements on all your teachers' pages so you can see the cool announcements, also see the cool pictures. I've seen some of the cool throwback pictures of Mr. Smith and Miss Simmons, so I hope you guys are checking those announcements as well. And also, the daily announcements tell you who's leading the homeroom challenge. KU has led for a while. We want to make sure Notre Dame and Spellhouse that you guys are stepping up your game by completing your assignments. Don't want KU winning every week, you guys. I mean, I'm glad KU is winning, but it would be great if Notre Dame or someone else stepped their game up just so we can knock KU out for a week. Sounds good to me. I hope you guys are working towards that goal, as well as who is going to be Kipster of the Week. So all of that we encourage you to do in our daily announcements. So make sure you're reading the daily announcements on every page, you guys. You don't want to miss anything. Today's lesson, we're going to get into talking about patterns and codes. Again, my personal connection of when we think about codes is more so coding with computers and technology, but we also want to pause and take a step back and think about coding in a different way. So I'm going to show you an example of coding in a minute, but I want us to remember our big question. How can humans use waves and patterns to communicate? Yesterday we read about some devices, or not even so much, I guess, devices, but some different ways people communicated in the 1800s. We also read about how alphabets create patterns which help us communicate. We don't necessarily think about communicating on that level, but the text yesterday helped us think about it on that level. So we're going to dig a little deeper in understanding codes and how to decode some information. So let's go into our key vocabulary for today. We have the definition code, which is a pattern of symbols. We also have the definition binary code, which is a code that consists of only two symbols. So here's an image that sort of shows us that the two symbols that's going to create a binary code is the number 0 and the number 1. So those binary codes actually create or is in a lot of technology that we use, and we know that codes are also in a lot of technology that we use, but we're going to take it back a little bit and think about coding that's not so much used in the computer system before we even get into coding and reading binary codes. I want to also remind you that your key vocabulary is always in your classwork. So when I'm looking at incorrect answers, what is the definition of code? What is the definition of binary code? These answers should not be incorrect because the answers are right there in front of your face. Any information on this page is there and given so you can read it, so you can learn something new. You're not learning if you're not looking at the key vocabulary words. So please make sure you're reading the definitions. Please make sure you are selecting the correct definitions because, again, it's really unacceptable that you're getting these answers incorrect when it's right there and it's given to you. Let's go ahead and think about coding. What is a code? So what are some examples of code? So we have the dolphin, and then we have this person who is scuba diving right now, but this is a person that's probably training dolphins, have trained whales, or trained animals in some way in water. And there are ways for dolphins and humans to communicate through codes, but this was just sort of a little fun way to transition us into thinking about coding. So when you see the letters 0, N, and E, we know and we can understand because 1, we speak English, and 2, we know these alphabets and we know what these alphabets create or what these letters create. We know what this is and what this code is, but what we haven't thought about is how this is a pattern and how this is a type of code. So when you see the letters O, N, and E, you understand that these letters make up the word one. Well, how do we know that, right? When we were younger, we learned how to read, we learned to put letters together, we learned to put sounds together. Well, those letters are helping us create these patterns, and these patterns are helping us understand words and be able to read the words in English language. So how is this an example of a code? Well, let's go back to our definition of code. A code is a pattern of symbols. These alphabets, and remember in our text that we read yesterday, these alphabets are actually symbols, right? These symbols are letters for us. And when we put them together and when we change the patterns actually create different words. So if I were to just create, use the letters O and N, we know that that is on. So changing these letters and changing the alphabets around creates different patterns. That is how it is an example of a code. Who can understand this code? Any human being that can read the English language can understand this code. Yesterday we talked about quickly in the text how Chinese people actually use symbols and not letters as their way of speaking and communicating with one another. So they may not be, depending on if they're, diverse and they understand the English language, they may not understand what ONE is, but we are able to because we've grown up reading and understanding the English language. So this is a code. We don't think of it, but every word that's on here is a type of code and is a type of pattern that has been created with the letters and of the alphabet. Later on today, we're going to get into understanding how to read binary code, which I think would be pretty fun. And all of my tech people who love coding, you're going to think it's fun too.